Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session. This is a panel discussion on disrupting inequalities across the curriculum. I am joined this morning by some incredible humans who just came off of a high a few days ago. Leon is shaking his head. I am going to assume that they're all going to say, yes, that was. We just coming off of a high from CSTA in Chicago. Everyone made it home safely. And I am joined by Leon Tynes, Carla, Neely, Shawn, Patrick, Higgins, and I am Shaina Glass. I'm going to allow for each of them to introduce themselves to you directly. But I'll start by just saying I'm Shaina Glass. I'm a professional learning manager with CSTA, the Computer Science Teachers Association. And I am also honored to have been a fellow, a CSTA fellow with Leon Tynes.
Nice segue.
I know.
So my name is Leon Tynes. I've had the pleasure of teaching computer science K through 12. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm happy to be here. I've done Scratch for so many years. I don't want to date myself, Shaina. So I'm going to stop there and hand that off. Shawn.
I like that segue.
I'm Shawn Patrick Higgins. For the last 10 years, I was a middle school media arts and coding teacher. Just this last year, kind of mid-year, just back in February, I did transition. So I'm going to be I've started a 6th to 12th grade game making. So it's half of it's middle school, which focuses on Scratch, and half of it's high school, which is in Construct 3. For those 10 years, my Scratch became, after my first 2 years of teaching, pretty much became my center point, my fulcrum. So learn lots of photo stuff, learn audio stuff, and kind of manifest it in Scratch in the middle. And I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carla, Neely, and I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I am also an equity fellow for this year with Shawn Patrick. And Scratch was a program that I introduced when I taught primary, actually. And then from me learning how to use the microbit, I learned how to connect it with Scratch as well. And I have been teaching for so many years, I don't want to date myself either, but I am in the transition of moving to Washington, D.C. as an Albert Einstein Fellow on Capitol Hill. So I'm very excited about the work I'm going to be doing on everyone's behalf who is watching and learning from us for a year.
Excellent. And I didn't give my Scratch experience. I actually did start, I'm not going to put a year on it, but some years ago, and flipped to providing professional support to teachers in professional learning on how to utilize Scratch in the classroom, to actually implementing it across my district for all of our K through 8 students in a variety of ways, bringing in AI, and just it's been a transition, and they are actually in year 3 of the implementation district-wide of using Scratch. So
with Scratch, it's really easy to date yourself, because I think we've got 2019 when Scratch 3 came out. We've got, I think, 2013, I think it was, when Scratch 2 came out. So if you started with that Scratch 1, you can appreciate yourself as an OG Scratch educator.
As Leon has muted himself, yes, let's not go that far back. It's wonderful that it's because it makes me think of when I first started. The kids I've taught Scratch to just graduated from high school. So let's just let that marinate. Yes, they did. Okay, alongside all of these fellows are these beautiful humans. We currently have up to 40 fellows and are in the midst of gaining more. So applications are now open. We'll talk about that little tidbit a little later, but we want to know who's joining us today. So if you can, who's in the room? We're actually following the chat.
We have a
And
few OG Scratch educators in the house.
ooh, Shawn Patrick, you want to say hello and let us know who's in the space?
Oh, no, I was just looking. I just opened up the chat myself too, and was just going through. I just saw a couple people doing a hashtag about it.
Yay. Joe's like, that was last year, 2019. It felt like last year. Let's just skip over all the things that have happened in recent years. But yes, and good morning to everyone. I see we are actually in just about every coast. Carla's on the East Coast. I'm Central, and Leon and Shawn Patrick are West. So we're hitting just about every time zone here in the US this morning. And luckily it is still morning, just a little bit longer for Carla.
Got Massachusetts, NYC, Houston, San Antonio,
Whoop, whoop.
Jersey, Maryland,
Aw, I see some
Utah,
people right now.
Phoenix, Memphis.
Indianapolis, New Jersey. New Jersey is so beautiful. Awesome, awesome. Welcome, everyone. Oh, we were really close to Central Illinois. Brazil, Minnesota. This is awesome. And Italy, really. Oh, hey, Vicky. We just really appreciate you all joining us this morning. This is pretty awesome. Glad we're able to see the chat too. So let's have some conversations with our panelists. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so you can see them more in depth. Perfect. And let's go a little deeper into what you currently do or what you've done in this last year, and one inequity you have faced as a teacher in your classroom. Let's start with Shawn Patrick.
So I've taught I just transitioned to my third school. So my teaching experience was my first 6 years was at the SEI Academy in Portland, Oregon. And it was a very unique school. SEI is a 40-year-old nonprofit. It's the largest African-American founded nonprofit in Oregon. And it focuses on kind of wraparound and support services for youth of color, but it's inclusive to pretty much anyone, but that's the main focus. And they had been operating about successfully for about 25 years, but in around 2000, they decided that they were going to especially Black students are being failed by Portland public schools, open up a charter school. I worked there for 6 years. It was really unique just because it was housed within the nonprofit. So it was a very small, we only had about 120 kids. And it was a mix of students who had kind of been having trouble in the surrounding schools, and then also students whose parents kind of wanted, Portland is well known for being the whitest city in the country. And it was usually African-American parents who wanted their kids to have an experience being in a school with majority of folks that look like them. So it was my first 6 years. So very different from kind of some surrounding schools, but it was very small, kind of family-like. We had very small classes. That's where I kind of started with Scratch. And then in Park Rose, we kind of transitioned out. And in both schools, one thing that was a struggle was always kind of financing. In Park Rose, it was a public school, much larger classes, 40 kids instead of 15. But the biggest inequity in Park Rose was definitely money. Especially you're trying to teach Scratch, you got 30 to 40 kids in the room, headphones. I think people don't think about this, but in public schools, headphones are one of the main points. They say, well, can't kids bring headphones? Like, no, these are middle schoolers or elementary school. Like keeping track of headphones when you got 40 kids in the room just doesn't work. So it's a constant struggle to kind of equip your students to be successful when they can't even hear the computer, right? So that's something I think that has been a real struggle, and is a struggle for most educators who are not in a wealthier school, right? Is just equipping us with the basics, things like headphones. And a lot of times that conversation, which is the reality for 60 to 80% of educators, gets lost in kind of conversations about all the lovely ambitious tech programs that are out there, and where the focus is on coding, right? So I think dealing with that, trying to always come up with alternatives for audio, that's always a huge thing, a struggle. But by focusing on visual projects, there's, you can kind of offset that. You can write grants. I think all of us have probably had that experience of writing 7 to 8 grants a year just to get your fundamentals, get your computer screens that aren't broken, get your headphones. So that's just, one aspect. We could talk more about different aspects, but I don't want to ramble on too long. We can drill down into specifics later.
You're 100% right, Sean Patrick. It's crazy to see that in 2022, teachers are still the ones trying to fulfill their students' needs by writing those Jonas Shoes grants, or those, I mean, I remember, and I still support so many Amazon wish lists right now are set up not for teacher needs, but for teacher needs for students. Who would want to share what they're currently doing and an inequity that they face as a teacher? Carla, Leon.
I'll go. My situation is unique. Now, I will say our issue is not funding. Whatever I want as far as computer science, my principal will co-sign on whatever grant I want to apply for. In most cases, I do get them. As I mentioned, my situation is unique because they're Black girls, they're in poverty, and they have that mindset that computer science was for girls. And then when I told them I was a computer scientist, they didn't believe me, because the first thing they said were, you are Black, meaning Black people do not do computer science. So my whole inequity issue was trying to convince them that yes, we do. Because if we didn't do it, you want to see Leon and myself here. So we do them. There's a whole bunch, and Shaina, there's a whole bunch of us who do it. So really going into practices that was hard in the beginning, really getting their mindset to understanding that yes, they can do this. And there are so many free avenues now where you can do this. It was a blessing, even though I'm tired, with CSTA, finding a curriculum for next school year that's absolutely free, because computer science can be expensive sometimes. But finding curriculum that's absolutely free, that hits those standards and the goals that I wanted. So my whole thing is, really pushing with the girls that computer science can look like them, because I came from that exact same community and grew up there. So it is possible.
Leon?
Yes, ma'am. So I worked in urban public education for about almost 12 years, and I recently transitioned to an all-girls school, Catholic school, and I'm the first Black male educator ever in their 78-year history. So right now, I'm in a very privileged place, but we're doing a lot of diversity initiatives where 40% of our kids are on scholarship. So that's where you'll find the different demographics and different cultural, racial things going on there, but also saying that there's a couple of things. Number one, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome when our Black and brown kids come to the school. They don't feel like they belong, or they feel out of place because mom's not rolling up in a Benz. But we have a different culture there where it doesn't really matter with that. So when I have those kids, we have those conversations. And then number two, we have kids that aren't used to project or problem-based learning. So we have kids that have done an amazing job getting all A's or 4.12s or whatever. But the problem is that they don't know how to synthesize the information into one singular idea or project. So, and they're like, what do you mean? Yeah, I want all of these things that you've learned in these other classes to come together in one culminating project, and it throws them off every time. So I think when we talk about privilege, I see more project-based learning coming out of like Shawn's class, but even at the upper level, where we think it's the upper level, and it's not so much, because they don't know what to do with the learning that they have. And Scratch goes from, I mean, little kids, I've done it with, you know, fourth graders all the way through 12th grade and even some college kids. It's a great tool. For it to be free is a game changer for every educator. It doesn't matter where you come from. And it definitely, you know, bridges the gap. As long as we're teaching those critical concepts, it bridges the gap into, you know, moving into like text-based languages. So that's what I love about it.
Excellent, excellent. Let's go on to our next question. One that I consider to be a little challenging, and it piggybacks off of Carla. What curriculum or content or combo of the two have you found that fosters equitable access and learning for all of your students?
I can answer that. I can start off, I'm sorry. Ironically, and I'm not saying this because I'm on the Scratch platform, the one thing that helped me was Scratch in combination with Microbit, because the one thing I'm going to tell you about girls, no matter what type of girl they say that they are, girls like cute stuff. They love cute things and they like colorful things and things that they can decorate. And Scratch and Microbit together, they do that. When you look at Scratch and their block coding and their text-based coding, everything is colorful where it attracts their eye. And they can always add that cute stuff. When you look at Microbit, that small little cube, square, as my girls called it, can do so many things that you can think that you can't possibly think of. And they're constantly adding new things and improvising to it every year. And it's this cute little computer that they can put in their pockets, but it does so many things. And that's really helped me because if it's cute, I can catch them. If you want to add that cute stuff, here's the requirements I need you to do on Scratch and Microbit first. Then when we have time, if we have time, you don't like your grade I gave you on your project, here's a little extra credit activity you can do now with Scratch and Microbit, where you have that option to make it cute. Cute is the big thing with girls, let me tell you. So when you're looking, I didn't know how serious it was until I started really teaching girls like I do now at an all-girls school. If you could find anything, Scratch was outstanding, Microbit was outstanding, and I love how they work together. Cute little stuff that they like, that they know they can decorate and make it pretty, you have them. And you could play that against them and use it as a motivational technique as well. Okay, since you have this A, now you can add some cute little glitter programs to your project, things like that. And that's where it really helps me as far as equity with them.
Shawn, Leon?
I'll go ahead and go. It's a trap. And it's great trapping kids. I love doing that because the minute they are scared, don't get me wrong, because, you know, before I was where I was, you know, the low SES students that I had, they were scared. They were like, what is that? We don't do that in our community. So they were scared. And then all of a sudden they do one thing. They get one light to move or one functionality on that microbit. And I love that physical computing too. And then it's over. And you can put anything in front of them. They're going to do it. They're going to work hard. And then at a certain point, you can have them start creating and iterating. That's the biggest thing for me, because when Scratch can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. And you can keep adding functionality to it. Okay, great. You got it to do this. Or what's the next step? What, you know, so that's what I love about it, you know, being flexible and things like that. And then also having a physical component. We use it with Raspberry Pi as well. Very powerful. So being able to have that physical component, you know, working, we've done it with, you know, Spiro, we've done it with so many different platforms, and being able to be agile and mobile, just about everything works with Scratch. So that's been powerful in the classroom to be able to promote that, that physical computing component.
Yeah, I think piggybacking on what both of them are saying, for me, like the curriculum is really, you know, and you've had the student who's like, man, why do I have to learn this? And more than anything else, right, our job is, you know, prove its value. Don't take that as an insult. Take it as like they are asking for proof. Especially, one thing that I found is that kids on a middle school level who are first getting exposed to this is like the number one thing that kind of inhibits kids is the cute look of like the cartoon cat. Like it kind of students feel like it's almost babyish. And the main advice that I have in kind of combating this is prove its value. How do you do that? You do that by making projects based around or able to be infused by student interest. Then that's usually media sampling. I am my background is in media arts. So obviously I'm a bit biased in that, but I really think that is the key when you start to allow and empower your students to kind of manifest their projects, having the content they want, whether that's a TV show, whether that is a Twitch streamer, whether that is a movie, or whether that's music that they care about in their personal life. That's what's going to kind of prove that value to them. I think the other big thing, there's like little tricks here and there. I do teach media arts and something, I worked for years in Pixlr and then I moved to Photopea, but there's these free kind of Photoshop alternatives. And, we do these mandala projects where we're kind of cloning, copy and paste and copy and paste and twist and copy and paste and twist and copy and paste. And it's cool, looks cool, and I print them out, but it's monotonous. And then we go into Scratch and that's our first taste of the clone tool, is where they reproduce exactly what they manually did with code. And they put together like 8 pieces of code. And this is after working for like a week on this like Photoshop project, or Photopea free Photoshop project. And they press a button and it makes 10 versions, or it makes 100 versions, or it makes 1,000 versions. So there's small ways like that where you can start, and people are like, man, why didn't you have us do it this way before? You made us work for a week in Photoshop and we could have just used the code to make it happen. I'm like, but they're the ones saying that, right? So you kind of like start setting things up tricky because you're proving its value. And that was just in my class always, usually starting off 6th grade's a lot easier. It's easier to pull that buy-in. Once you get to 8th grade, they're big kids and they don't trust you quite as much. But I always say to them, like, what is the reason you are taking this class? Well, you want to learn how to make things look good, sound good, work well, and you want to learn to show it off right to the people who matter to you. And that's a skill that can go into any of these interests that you want. And Scratch does that. So there is code, but I do want to give a shout out to the other 2 tabs, right? They got that sound tab, they got that visual tab, right? And that is that fusing of all those interests. So I think selling it that like code is, how do you make it do what you want in a digital space? And that's just how I sell code. and that tends to get a bit more traction. So that's usually how I go at it.
Love it. Something I wanted to add to this too. I'm checking the chat. But something I was going to say before reading even the chat is listening to each of you. You're each at different levels. So Carla, you start with the elementary. Shawn Patrick, you're at the middle. Leon, you go from middle to high and beyond. But something that I really feel, especially because we were talking about physical computing, is just the hands-on and starting with our itty bitties. So something I really appreciate, and I've worked with teachers to do, is to take those blocks off the screen and place it in their hands. And as our youngest learners are learning that their hand-eye coordination, understanding letters and numbers, understanding what an algorithm actually is, which is all of the directions they must follow in the classroom, taking those pieces from scratch and making it their reality, so that they feel comfortable with it when they get to Carla's classroom. And then Shawn Patrick, you can take it and turn it into the visuals. And Leon, they can excel in some of the things in the chat is, how do we build it and make it our own? Well, if you're already teaching kids these foundational things that they must learn alongside their parents from day one, give them the tools so that they see it every day. Turn the corners of your hallways into those building blocks, literally, by taking the blocks from in Scratch to where they know to stop. They know, those visual cues, those things build on what, and it's ironic, each of you are like this in my screen. But it literally is the building blocks of everything that you each said. So excellent, excellent, excellent. Just wanted to throw that little tidbit in. So all three of you gave phenomenal examples. Now, what is one suggestion you would give to a teacher that's new to this? That's like, hey, Scratch, Scratch. Are we really literally going back to, every time I think of the word Scratch, I know what it is here, but I think of the episode of Martin where he have to go back to Scratch. And they're like, where's that? And he turns around and everybody in the room pointing, like, over there. I really got to start from scratch. What do you tell someone who is new to this, who's trying to expand the opportunity of learning CS in their schools and in their classroom?
I'm gonna go first.
Go ahead.
Number one, celebrate the cat. Celebrate it visually. I mean, I did that when I was hosting scratch days on my campus, and they love the cat. I don't know why. They just totally love that image. They want to draw it, they want to recreate it, they want to make it, spin a world on its finger. I was okay, whatever y'all want to do. We collaborated with the art class. I was like, okay, I'm done with this cat infatuation. But definitely embrace that cat and make it a part of your classroom. Give them a project to to draw that cat, because that's one of the first things they learn, that meow, meow, come on. And they're gonna get a million meows. They love the cat. I don't know why. And it's kids of all ages, it doesn't matter. Okay. So they love the cat. Embrace that first. Number two, learn with your learners. Stop thinking you have to be so far ahead and this or that and the other. Learn with your learners. Please do that. Learn with your learners. And then if you really, I see someone saying they want a plush cat. Yeah, let's talk to Scratch about that, because I need one too. And then number three, I think I got four things, but number three, explain the code in bits and pieces. There's nothing wrong with remixing a project. There's nothing wrong with investigating how someone did a project, because the projects can, like I said, be very simple or very complex. There's nothing wrong with unpacking a project as a part of your classroom, instead of, oh, they always have to be building something. How about they identify things? When you teach those concepts, you say, hey, let's all go to this particular sample project, and I want to see in groups that you guys break down this project. What did they do from a coding perspective? And number four, always celebrate. Gallery walks, sharing code, playing each other's animations or games. Like I said, I used to do Scratch Day every year with culminating projects with Microbit, and it explodes. So like I said, you've got to make it kind of a feeling in your class and celebrate everything that Scratch has to offer.
I guess I go after my brother Leon. One of the things that I do, and I do it well, is shocks my class. I know we don't supposed to say this as educators. I play dumb very well. Now I know Scratch well, and the kids know this, but some days I play like I absolutely don't know anything, because I want to see how they think. And they have to teach me. And that's shocking when they do that. You're talking about debugging. I forgot what that means. I haven't done that in God knows how long. What is that? And they will look at me like, Miss Neely, really? And how long have you been teaching? And you don't remember how to? No, I don't know how to debug. Can you explain to me what you're doing? I know all kinds of languages in computer science. You're doing Python right now. I don't know what that means. And they explain. And that's a skill, especially when they're doing pair programming, that they need to learn how to explain something to that person who actually has a computer in their hand to do that on Scratch. That's one of the first things that I do. Second thing that I do is, as Leon mentioned, a lot of times a computer science skill has been new to me and I didn't know what I was doing, but I will learn it with the kids and they will actually be able to teach it better than what I would. And you have to be comfortable to drop that power sometimes and allow them to do that. And so I would sit back and say, oh, Leon, you learned how to do this program on Scratch a little bit easier than what I did. Can you show me what you did? And they will sit and do that. I might allow him to teach for the day. assist for the day, but something where we're keeping that skill going. And also, most importantly, if you can, try to incorporate the parents as much as you can. A lot of them, depending on what neighborhood you are in, what background your parents have, they might not know what computer science is when you say the term, but if they were to come in your room and see what it is, they know exactly what it is. So a lot of times, the kids will work on a project and I will have bring your parent to school day, like you have bring your kids to work day, and you have your parent and teach your parent what you did. And the parents will actually sit there and learn. And after they leave my room, you know what? My child is a genius. He knows how to work on the computer. When there's something, if that helps to push that conversation of your child furthering their computer science education, go ahead and do it. And that's really important, I think, having those parents come in. And it's fun, as Leon said, keep it fun. And that's it.
I think if I had one suggestion for any new teacher, that is try to, which bucket of projects is most resonates with your student population, right? There tends to be three big buckets that people go for. There's like audio and interaction, there is animation, and there is game making. And there's a couple variant, you can do data representation. And there's some kids who might really be into data visualization, something like that. But generally speaking, at least on the intro level, audio and interaction is one of the simplest and easiest, and it focuses more on media arts, bring that in. Animation is kind of its own bag. And there are some free platforms that maybe works even slightly better for drawing animation, like the Wick editor. But Scratch is great for animation and animating other PNGs, sprites, things like that. And then game making kind of is its own bag, and sometimes that can work really well. I mean, obviously, I am a full-time game making teacher now, so I'm into that too. But I think really for new teachers, audio and interaction tends to be one of the best project archetypes that scales really well. You're talking about prove its value to them. You're talking about involving family, like Carla is talking about. For an introduction project, bring in a little media arts, take a photo of your family member, maybe a parent, guardian, or someone else, and then have them tell 4 stories about people they know. Take those stories, if you're able to have a cell phone or even a Chromebook, just bring it up to them, have them tell a short 2-minute story, and then have 4 buttons, have the photo of them, and you can click a button. There's some very basic code that has a little animation, and it's maybe a storytelling from that family member, right? And that's something that seems very vital. It's like capturing, it's almost a way to represent the people and world around you, right? And again, it all comes back to proving that value. But maybe there's all kinds of different ways to kind of incorporate different aspects. Shout out for the other equity fellows. My group we went over the book by Goldie Mohammed, Cultivating Genius. She talks about her pursuits and the historically responsive literacy. There's bringing all these different aspects which you can kind of infuse into your projects. One of them being identity, right? How can you infuse identity into your student projects? Usually audio or visuals, taking photos of family members, of friends, of places you've been, maybe taking a screenshot of all the houses you've lived on Google Maps, and click that little crop screenshot of Google Maps and tell a story about that old house or your old room or something like that. There's all kinds of different ways where you can bring in the world around you, and that makes, I think, coding more useful, more vital, and, as I keep saying, proves its value. How are you proving its value?
Thank you so much, Shawn Patrick. Before we start pulling questions from the audience, I have one more, which is, what is something you are working on? I have recently worked on to support teachers in making CS more accessible to students. And Shawn Patrick, you started kicking us off. Tell us about your hand in the work that you've done when you mentioned Cultivating Genius.
To start things off, yeah. So in our equity group, and this is something that I think will be housed on the CSTA website. The equity fellows have been working to kind of generate activities, resources, not just in Scratch and everything. So there probably isn't all that much in Scratch, but it's more general, right? Kind of a philosophical. but specifically in this year in our group, that had educators from New York, from Pennsylvania, from Oregon. We worked together to try to take one of the recent books that's proven pretty vital. That was, like I said, Cultivating Genius, and kind of presenting that to other educators. And then we're also kind of collecting exemplar projects. I remember the teacher from Pennsylvania, she did machine learning and poetry, and kind of connected that to thecode.org. One of the educators who presented in the session before this, Lauren Barris from New York, White Plains, I think, she was talking about character identity and kind of making superheroes, but connecting that back. I talk about the Say My Name app and name pronunciation and name stories in Scratch. So those are exemplar projects that are kind of connected. Some of them are Scratch, some of them aren't, but those will be in CSTA later. But it was just more going over, there's some seminal books, Stuck in the Shallow End. There's the recently released Power On, and Cultivating Genius are just some of the ones that are pretty well known in teacher groups about kind of addressing some of the equity issues. I'll let the other folks talk.
Yes, Leon, Carla, what have you been working on recently?
I'll go ahead so we can say the best for last. Mr. Tynes, we're gonna save him for last. 2 things I've been working on. My main thing is to help teachers see that computer science can be done as simple as possible and free. Before computer science became what it was, and I was teaching 1st grade, I would never teach 1st grade again, but I thought I would never teach middle school when I was a 1st grade teacher. And boy, didn't experience change, all of that. But one of the things that I did with 1st grade was when I taught them computer science, guess what I used? Because I was in an area where we couldn't afford anything. I taught them computer science with paper plates, scraps I found at home and scraps they found at their home. Because all coding is a program. It's a rule on how you're doing something. So if you could take these scraps, these paper plates, these forks, these pens, and all this other stuff, and you can arrange them in a way, you're already coding. So when I give you the computer and the program, you're ready. And that's how I taught my 1st graders and my kindergartners how to program. And also, as you all know earlier, I'm an Einstein Fellow. So I will be moving on Capitol Hill with one of the best senator teams in the country, I believe. And I say that because her educational background is computer science. She worked in computer science in the corporate world. She understands the inequities all the way around in computer science, and that helps. Because as teachers, that's a lot of our problem when we're voting. The politicians don't understand what we're talking about, or they will say they do, and then when they're in, we don't see the work. So I'm going to be making a lot of noise on Capitol Hill, so you all probably will be hearing me really soon to make sure that it's fair and it's easier for you all. So working on things as far as, licensure requirements, making those a whole lot easier for people like me who are at the elementary and middle school background. Where in Ohio, the teaching license for computer science is preschool through 12. I have no desire to go to high school. I have no idea what the pedagogy is like for high school. And that's real because all my experience is elementary and middle school. I wouldn't know what to do. And that's important, and they need to hear that before they begin, and a whole wealth of other things that I'm going to be working on. So I'm excited about making that transition out of the classroom onto the political side, so to speak. I'm gonna pass it to Leon. Take it on home.
Oh, good Lord, what am I doing? My kids are, of course, they're in Java, JavaScript. We're working in Unreal Engine. We're doing all these complicated things, but we have a organization called Girls Have It Day. It's Girls Have It. And what I'm working on specifically this year is how we, as a privileged and accomplished institution, can give back to kids and communities that don't have the resources that we have on our campus. So we will be planning Girls Have It days at different campuses all over the Phoenix Valley. And we will be teaching Scratch, bringing the devices to them, giving them the half-day workshop that some of these kids are not getting at all. and introducing it not only to just the community, the kids, as well as even some of the teachers there, so that they can see that this is sustainable. But I always say this is that if you're going to teach computer science right now and going forward, you have to be a maverick. You can't sit there. You're not going to get the no one's going to give you oh, let me give you one-to-one tablets or one-to-one this or that. No one's going to get that for you until you create the need for it. So you may have to start with the grant. I mean, everybody on this panel has written grants or done competitions or whatever. You really have to start there to get that traction. And when people see good things happen, they're going to be like, oh, I didn't know you can do that. So how can I support you? Then you start getting that. And it's just one of those things. If you're going to come into this space, then you're going to do that. And also do something in your classroom. Another thing that I do, even to this day, I hate homework for kids in tech because they might be working from a hotspot. They might not have broadband. Even at my school, there's some girls that don't have broadband. Okay. So I make sure it's like, I don't want you to do homework. We're doing everything here. I'm going to flip my class. I'm going to talk to you for 5-10 minutes and I'm going to do a release. And then we work in class. So we've got to be mindful when we have these tech classes, when we have these computer science classes, we have to be mindful about that access point. And the way I fixed it is by flipping it all the way on its head. We're going to do the tech here. We're going to do the debugging here. And then we're going to leave it here. When you leave here, you can make some mental notes or write some notes down or email me or message me, and we will work on that the next time. And I also make my time available for lunch, after school, before school, whatever. I'm one of those teachers. So yeah.
Yes,
Lunchtime, best time.
Like I was gonna say, yes, he is. Yes, you are. Each of you are. I don't even know how I find the time or to pull you, or that you to work with you. And to add to that, something I'm working on is each of them. I support each of them as equity fellows, current and alum. And that's one of my major projects. The other was mentioned in the chat was the new Power On book for the graphic novel for students focused on computer science. I worked with some equity fellow alumni, and we actually built the teacher resources that are now available. And the resources are free. And it's definitely on making computer science more accessible in your schools, where the book changes and has the students to identify the issues that they face in their community and why do they not have access to be able to solve these problems. So they start to ask you questions. If you're interested in that, I'm sure you all know how to reach out to any of us. We'll make sure that all of our information is available if you have questions on any of the things that we mentioned. Now, some of the questions that you all dropped in the chat, and any of you can answer, we still have a few minutes, is how do you deal with the kids who are expert coders and the ones who are just learning? That was one question.
Lord. Yeah, I think we've all dealt with that. You better have plan B, A, B, C in your back pocket. If you get those kids that are just moving super fast, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get a lot of head nods. The smartest student with the highest grades and the highest test scores don't necessarily perform the best in computer science. Just want to make sure everyone understands that. The kid that's in trouble is going to excel. I'm going to tell you right now, and you're going to have to keep them engaged. So just have that advanced thing. What I used to do is there's a whole bunch of tutorials online for different games, different animations and things like that. Yes, and Christine just dropped in the chat, they can also be that expert person, but I also want them to continue that learning. I don't want to hinder them as well. So I use them that way, and when at some point, because it reinforces learning, but I don't default to that. I'm like, okay, guess what? You helped last period. I want you to work on this advanced project, emulate what this person did and then remix that project once you finished it. So yeah, exactly. There's anything could come up. You've always got to have a couple of plans together, especially when you're in a classroom with technology and coding. But that's the way that I do it, is just making sure I have a little bag of tricks, and it's not much, but a couple of projects and a couple of things that those advanced students can do. Struggling students, that's where I do my roundtable, and I sit right in the middle of them. And okay, let's work on this. Let's figure it out. Your middle of the, I don't call the middle of the road. It depends on where they are as being comfortable with this particular content. They tend to collaborate. As long as you don't have that rigid structure in your class that you can't get up and go see Bobby across the way because, hey, Bobby figured this out already. So can I run over there and see Bobby? Yeah, why not? And Jean over here figured out something that no one else has figured out. As long as you're inviting that healthy collaboration and it's not like TikTok related, yeah, then, definitely do that in the class. But, monitor it. And especially as the kids get younger kids, you definitely want to monitor that, because that can end up being a party that you don't want. But yeah, just having that little bag of tricks, and you don't even have to understand it yourself, but you know that video is out there. Hey, it's a great project. I think you can do this. Go ahead and let me see how far you get.
Yeah, I think that's great. One thing to mention too, and you've probably had this experience, is if you've been teaching for a couple of years, this problem tends to just disappear, because you've had your all-stars, and you've had your all-stars 4 years ago and 3 years ago and 2 years ago and 1 year ago. And most of those all-stars are still on Scratch in high school. And so if you're like 8th grader all-star, goes and looks at your 3-year-old 11th grader all-star and what they're still doing now, there's inspiration to be had. I mean, the reality is, what if a math student just take the exact same problem and extrapolate it, right? Or substitute it in a different. What if you're taking an 8th grade math class and this kid's doing 11th grade algebra or, trigonometry or something? Like, there's an answer. There's an easy answer. Your class isn't for them, right? Like, that's just the truth. If that's what you're teaching, if they're great at coding and you're teaching an intro or intermediate class, you got to find those other resources. Like, if you just substitute it, you're going to be good. And that was like, I had this just in my new school, I had a 6th grader and she's just tearing through it. But I just sent her to one of my old 8th graders from 4 years ago, who's a senior now. Look at her Scratch page, pull a couple of projects we can start to emulate. We can start to build some stuff up. There's also, as Leon said, YouTube. I'm sure everyone here knows Griff's Patch, right? And you follow him on YouTube. Griff Patch, the most followed Scratcher in the world. Very, very nice English computer scientist. He started making YouTube videos 3 years ago. There's also some other really good ones. Warfame was making YouTube videos for a couple of years, has some really good tutorials that are kind of more advanced at like 9th grade, 10th grade level. I think he just changed his name because it was too close to a very popular game these days. But then there's other people like Kevin Levin. There's Mick Guy. He was making YouTube videos when he was 8. Now he's like 16. They used to be really cute because there was a 10-year-old making advanced Scratch videos. But there's resources out there, and your students, if you've been doing this for a few years, are probably going to be your number one resource. And one last thing is also, if you are incorporating media arts into your projects, these are projects that students have done before because they haven't acquired those media, right? If you're doing storytelling, if you're taking photos of the world around you, bringing that in and developing that's something. If they have the technical know-how, that's great, but they haven't built the thing. If you're doing kind of legitimate project-based work focused on the student's world, this problem also kind of disappears. They finish it fast, then they can keep on working on another project. But that's my main thing, is use your former all-stars, show off their work, follow your students, especially, your top 10 each year, because probably at least half of them will keep it being active, right? And then they're there for the rest of your students, and it kind of creates this ecosystem. And sometimes your older students will actually be enthusiastic about making comments or making suggestions for your young students, and it creates that kind of like trickle down support, which is like the whole the best case scenario of like utopian social networks. Anyway, that's what Scratch can be.
Hey, Shawn, can you put some of those links for those people, or just even put those names in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll get on it.
Awesome.
Thanks, both of you. So I'm going to turn to Carla. And Carla, I think I'm going to tag team this question with you. And I know each of you can answer this as well, but I'm going to start with Carla. How much disruption of the system have you done to get equity in your school addressed? It's a heavy question. I'm gonna start while you thinking about it. I'm gonna start. Okay. So what are some ways that you disrupted the system? So for me personally, I disrupted the system by looking at the data. Data is important. That is really important when trying to establish a computer science program for a school system. And many administrators, and there's different levels to administration. Many of you may, when you say administration, you may be thinking principal, right? And some principals, they do, but there's other layers that have to come into play. Those who handle the content, they have to see that correlation. And when you, and of course, we're all here looking at it from a lens of, from our littles up to middle school, going into high school. But you got to look at high school to see if the kids are even doing this. There's pathways across the country. And when my district, there was 0, I was like, this data is very simple for me to ask the question. Weirdly, asking the question led to me trying to solve the problem that I didn't know that I was going to attempt to solve. But pulling that data caused lots of ruckus, lots of anxiety, not on my part, but on those who had to answer the question. Why do we not have this? Why are not our students not receiving access to this? Why do our teachers not know what this is? You want to start with the words fear. Teachers aren't doing it because they're scared of it. But in reality, as an administrator, if you bring it to them, they will come. Especially if you lead with student participation, which is a lot of things that I heard last week from CSTA. It was a lot of teachers saying, let the students be the one to start and ignite that flame. You may be afraid, but no one's going to say no to a kid. No one's going to say no to their students. So if you allow the students to lead, as each of you have said here today, that starts the disruption. And with that, present the data. Carla, how have you disrupted the system?
Well, in the shortcut version, I look at the data nationally, the data regionally, the data statewide, the data locally. And one of the things I do, I don't know if Leon and Shawn Patrick have done this, I share that data with my students. This is what they're saying about you. I'm not saying that it's true, but this is what they're saying about you. Now, I know from dealing with you that it's not true, but they're saying that it is. What's going on? And then they'll talk about it. And I had an incident with one of my students a while ago, and my response was, I don't have a problem with this, you do. So you could talk about it. My job is going to be to help you put all the words together correctly so that what you feel is not offensive, but they still get your point. That's my job. So instead of me going to admin at all the levels that Shaina said, me complaining, I have my computer science education already. My students who want it are complaining. So, okay, let me have you work on these projects and we're going to show the people that yes, girls can do it. Yes, Black girls can do it. No, it does not matter that you're poor, you still can do it because you are all, ironically, my students are all 3 of those things. So you're going to show the state leaders and all of that what you're doing, not me, because I've already proven them wrong on my end. It is your job. And my job as an educator, and I feel that it's everyone's job, is to teach kids what their voice is, because my voice is different than yours. Because if you really feel in your heart, dang it, that you're going to be a Black female computer science teacher, you need to tell these people then to convince them, not me. I will help you. I will deal with the hard parts for you. I will say certain things that you want to say that you can't say because you're not old enough. Yes, I will do that for you. I will make all that easier for you. But then you also have to learn the battle for yourself. And also, as teachers, when we're teaching students to advocate for themselves, teach them that they're not necessarily going to get a yes right away. You may get some no's, even if you have, okay, I'll think about it. That's good. Because that means I have more time to still convince you when you're saying you're thinking about it. My background is science, and then computer science second. And what I always teach my students, even with computer science when they're working on the project, your job is to convince the no's, not the yeses, and not the I'll think about it. Because in most cases that I think about it, they want to see some more data. They want to read the stuff that you presented, and then they'll say yes. Your job is to convince the no's. Now, when you have that together, you convince the no's, you got it. That's the hard part. I'm going to sit in the back. You're going to convince your superintendent that girl should have a computer science program. He asked me, do I want to teach it? Absolutely, I would teach it. But you have to convince. And that's what I do. I give all the power to the kids. Sometimes as teachers, that's hard because we're used to power and having that order. But when you teach the kids how to advocate for themselves in anything, just not computer science, but anything, they will respect you more. They will respect that school more. They will feel comfortable talking to you about anything, some things you don't want to hear, but they feel comfortable around you and they will tell you those things. And that's what you want. And that's when you see the progression happen with students of any type of background, when you allow them. I am so happy that I can just sit back now at my desk and allow them to control everything. They know if I have to get up and control it, I'm shutting down a whole lot of stuff. So they don't want me. I'm the last resort. But for me to sit there and watch them, I looped my students from 3rd grade to 8th. When I left the classroom this year, that was my last class, I saw them as 8th graders. And to see them from 3rd grade to 8th problem solve. And what's funny is some of them do it in the way I do it. So a lot of times I hear their tone just like my tone. And I have to tell them to calm down a little bit. But Miss Neely, that's how you talk. I do. Yeah, you do. Well, go on ahead and keep on talking then. If that's how I talk, you're doing it right then. But what could be a better way that we could do it? And again, the key is teaching the students how to advocate for themselves. They can't explain it no better. They can explain it better than us. They're the ones who have the need, not us. We want the materials, but they have the need for the instruction.
Leon.
I came into the education industry specifically to disrupt. I could have stayed working in corporate. You know, a lot of us teachers that are coming in now have worked in a different environment and are coming into what's going on now. So I came in to disrupt. I knew the type of classroom and type of program I wanted. I wanted an award-winning program, period. That's it. It just anywhere I've gone, it's been an award-winning program. And that's where the leadership part comes in from a teacher. If you have that mindset and you have a goal, then that's what you've got to meet that goal by any means necessary. So if I have to troll the internet to find the latest grant, to find the latest program, to find the best software I can use with the kids, the best platform, the best approach, then that's what I'm going to do. So that's a mindset that's coming in saying that we are going to get these kids to do this, or we're going to get them excited about this. And it has to be a mindset. You have to bring that to your administrator that, hey, you know what? I'm doing this. If I step on a couple of toes, I'll apologize. But then, so a lot of people have looked at me, Shaina, and said, wow, you won some teacher awards. Yes, I've won quite a few, but the amount of student awards is in the hundreds. You feeling me on that? So that's the point. The point is to get the students to feel good about operating in a project-based learning environment and an authentic environment, and using computer science to do those things. So that's how we disrupt. And you know what? I remember when I started education, my mother's an educator of 45 years. She said, get the results first. Get it first, get the results first, invite them in your classroom, open your door, like Sean Patrick said. Let them see what good instruction is supposed to look like. Let them see what excitement looks like in education. They're going to start asking questions and figuring out what's going, how did you do that? How did you get this? How did you do that? So, and also connecting with so many other educators like those that are in here right now. And on the chat, like all amazing educators, because the ones that are doing this next level work are the ones that come to things like this, like, the ones that go to CSTA, ISTE, other things like that. If, the ones that are engaged, we don't just check out and go home. So I think disruption really starts with the teacher mindset, and then easily you can build those that confidence in those students, because they're going to see, wow, you're really vested. So I think that's, what Carla was saying, what Shaina was saying, what Sean Patrick is saying. They can sense that in you. They can sense it, whether you're genuine and you care.
I think we've made time. We do have other questions that we really want to address, but we might take that into the chat or even on social media. I really think we should address the one on barriers to inclusion for all students within the classroom. But I'll tag these individuals and use the hashtag from this conference so we can continue the conversation online. We have met time. Woo! I want you all to come off chat, off Zoom. Off mute. Thank you. Come off mute and thank the audience. Feel free to drop something in the chat if you want to connect with any of us. I'm sure that you all can drop your LinkedIn or your Twitter, or they can connect directly in the swap card, so we can continue these conversations. I bow to each of you after this long, crazy week. I appreciate you all coming and having patience with me. And
Absolutely.
again, if you have more questions or want to connect with any of these beautiful human beings, feel free to reach out, or you can reach out to me and I can connect you all as well. Thank you for joining us. We made our time. Leon,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.